The red sun of Kepler 442 be cast long shadows across the mining colony of New Haven as another day ended in fear. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the watchtower, his weathered hands gripping the metal railing as he scanned the dark forest beyond the electric fence. The trees swayed in the alien wind, and somewhere in that darkness, death was waiting. Jake had been a soldier for 20 years before coming to this distant world. He had fought in the Mars Rebellion and defended the Jupiter colonies from raiders, but nothing in his experience had prepared him for the creatures that lived in these purple-leafed forests. The colonists called them shadow mows, and they were the stuff of nightmares. Dr. Lisa Hayes climbed the tower stairs, her tablet computer clutched in her shaking hands. She was a scientist, not a fighter, but the creatures had made scientists of them. Everyone in New Haven had studied the enemy, trying to find some weakness, some way to survive. Any word from Earth Command? Jake asked without turning around. They sent another message, Lisa said. Help is coming. The Galactic Council is sending their best military unit. Jake laughed, but there was no humor in it. Their best couldn't stop these things on Titan 7 or on Ross 154. What makes them think it will work here? Lisa looked at her tablet. The screen showed photos and data about the shadow mows. Each creature stood 12 feet tall on powerful legs. Their black skin was covered in natural armor that looked like the shell of a giant insect. Their heads were long and narrow, filled with rows of sharp teeth. But the worst part was their eyes. The eyes showed intelligence. These were not simple animals. They could think, plan, and learn. The report from Ross 154 says they worked as a team. Lisa said they cut the power first, then attacked the communication tower. They knew exactly what to hit. Smart monsters, Jake said. The worst kind. 3 months ago, the first shadow maw had appeared at the edge of the colony. The security cameras caught it watching the humans from the tree, and it stood there for hours just looking. The next day 2 more came, then 5, then a dozen. They never attacked right away. They studied their prey first. First real attack came 2 weeks later. The shadow mows hit the mining station at night. They disabled the power generator with surgical precision, plunging the area into darkness. Then they destroyed the escape vehicles one by one. By the time the defense team arrived, 12 miners were missing. The only trace left behind were massive claw marks gouged deep into metal walls. Pete Chen finished his work shift and walked home through the dimly lit streets of New Haven. He was tired like everyone else in the colony. Nobody slept well anymore. His wife Maria was waiting for him at their small apartment. Their 7-year-old son Billy was playing with toy spaceships on the floor. Daddy, Billy ran to hug his father. Look what I built. Pete smiled and knelt down to examine Billy's creation. The boy had connected several toy ships together to make a larger vessel. That's great, son. What is it? It's a rescue ship, Billy said, for helping animals that are scared. Maria gave Pete a worried look. Even the children talked about rescue and safety now. The colony was no place to raise a child, but they had signed a 5-year contract. There was no going back to Earth until their time was finished. That night, the alarms began to wail. Jake rushed to the command center. His officers were already at their station. The security screen showed movement in the forest, lots of Movement how many? Jake asked. At least 20, sir, said Lieutenant Dan Murphy. Maybe more. They're surrounding the north fence. Jake grabbed his rifle and activated the colony's defense systems. Heavy guns emerged from hidden positions along the perimeter. Bright search lights cut through the darkness, but they shadow mows stayed just beyond their reach, moving like ghosts between the trees. Sir, incoming transmission from the Galactic Council ship, Murphy reported. The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of an alien vessel. Kander Zethar of the Vor Empire stood before the camera. His crystalline body reflected the ship's lights like a living prism. He had 6 arms and moved with fluid grace that spoke of thousands of years of evolution. Human colony, this is the GCS. Starfare. Zethar's voice came through the translator. We have arrived to assist with your predator problem. About time. Jake said. We've got at least 20 hostiles moving on our position. 20. Zethar's tone suggested amusement. Human. My tactical computers indicate these creatures pose minimal threat. We have weapons that can level mountains. We have shields that can stop stellar radiation. These primitive beasts will not survive our first salvo. Jake wanted to argue, but the transmission ended. On the security screens, he could see the Vorthon ship descending from orbit. It was beautiful and terrible, covered in weapon ports and energy collectors. The ship's guns could probably destroy the entire colony. With a single shot, the Shadow Moes seemed to sense the new arrival. They pulled back deeper into the forest, but Jake knew they were still watching. They were always watching. An hour later, Zethar materialized in the command center using Vorthon teleportation technology. Up close, he was even more impressive. His crystalline body stood 8 feet tall, and his multiple arms moved independently as he studied the human equipment. Primitive but functional, he observed. Now, where are these dangerous predators? Before Jake could answer, the alarm sounded again. This time, the security cameras showed something that made even the experienced commanders' blood run cold. A massive shape emerged from the forest, twice the size of the other Shadow Moes. Its armor was thicker, its claws longer, its eyes burning with fierce intelligence. That's the Alpha, Lisa whispered. We've never seen it this close before. The creature let out a roar that shook the entire colony. Windows cracked and the metal walls vibrated like drums. In the distance, smaller Shadow Moes answered the call, their voices joining in a chorus of primal fury. Zethar's confidence wavered for the first time. His sensors were giving him readings that didn't make sense. The creature's bioelectric field was stronger than anything in the galactic database. Its intelligence measurements were off the charts. Interesting, the alien commander said, but his voice had lost its casual tone. Perhaps these beings require more careful study. Alpha Shadow took a step toward the colony fence, and the ground shook under its massive weight. Behind it, dozens of smaller creatures emerged from the darkness, their eyes glowing like stars in the night. The real battle was about to begin. The battle began at dawn. Commander Zethar's ship fired its most powerful weapons at the Shadow Moes in the forest. Beams of pure energy cut through the trees, turning ancient wood into ash and vapor. The ground shook with each blast, and the air filled with smoke and the smell of burning. But when the smoke cleared, the creatures were Still there, they had scattered and regrouped, moving too fast for the ship's targeting systems to track. The Alpha Shadow Mose stood in a clearing. Completely unharmed, its armor had absorbed the energy blasts like they were nothing more than sunlight. Impossible, Zethar said from his command chair. Our weapons can destroy battleships. How are these beasts still alive? Jake Morrison watched from the colony's command center as the alien ship fired. Again and again. Each shot missed or failed to cause real damage. The Shadow Mose were learning, adapting to each attack pattern within minutes. They're too smart, Jake said. They study everything we do. Dr. Lisa Hayes was running scans on the creatures through the colony sensors. The readings made no sense. Their nervous systems are more complex than we thought. They're not just animals, they're processing information faster than our computers. The Alpha Shadow Mole let out another roar and the pack began to move. They spread out around the colony like water flowing around a stone. Some went left, some went right, but they all had the same goal. They were going to surround New Haven completely. All civilians to the emergency shelters, Jake ordered over the communication system. This is not a drill. Move now. Throughout the colony, families grabbed emergency bags and ran for the underground bunkers. Pete Chen held his wife Maria's hand as they rushed through the streets. Their son Billy ran beside them, clutching his favorite stuffed animal, a small brown bear named Patches. The emergency shelter was located under the school building. It could hold 500 people and had enough supplies for 2 weeks. But as the Chen family approached the entrance, an explosion rocked the building above them. Debris fell from the ceiling and the lights went out. The main power line, Pete said. They cut it just like on Ross 154. In the darkness, people began to panic. Children cried and adults shouted for their families. Emergency lighting kicked in, casting everything in a dim red glow. The scene looked like something from a nightmare. Everyone stay calm, Maria said in her teacher's voice. She had spent years managing classrooms full of children, and her training took over. Form lines and move into the shelter. Slowly, but as they moved toward the entrance, another explosion shook the building. This time part of the ceiling collapsed, blocking the shelter doorway. With tons of concrete and steel, we're trapped, someone screamed. Pete tried to find another way out, but the building was collapsing around them. Through a crack in the wall, he could see Shadow Moss moving through the streets above. They were inside the colony now. This way, Pete said, leading his family toward a service tunnel. We can get to the residential section and find another shelter. But as they crawled through the narrow tunnel, Billy's small hand slipped from his mother's grip. In the darkness and confusion, the 7-year-old boy took a wrong turn. By the time Pete and Maria realized he was missing, Billy was already far away, lost in the maze of damaged buildings. Billy emerged from a storm drain into the residential area of the colony. The streets were empty and silent. Broken glass covered the ground and overturned vehicles blocked the roads. The boy had never seen his home look so scary. He walked slowly down Main Street, calling for his parents. Mom, Dad, where are you? But there was no answer. Billy was completely alone. Above the colony's ether watched through his ship's cameras as the small human child wandered through the Devastation. The alien commander's tactical computer immediately began calculating survival probabilities. Human child detected in hostile zone. The computer announced probability of survival 0%. Zethar had seen many battles across the galaxy. He had watched entire civilizations fall to superior forces. But something about seeing a small child in danger made even his crystalline heart feel heavy. Can we beam the child to safety? He asked his crew. Negative. Commander, shadow bioelectric interference is blocking our transporters. On the security screens, they could see the massive Alpha Shadow moving through the colony. It was hunting, following some scent or signal that led it directly toward the residential area, directly toward Billy. The creature moved with surprising grace. For something so large, its claws made no sound on the pavement. Its breathing was silent. It was the perfect predator, evolved over millions of years to kill. Without warning, Billy turned a corner and stopped there. Standing in the middle of the street 50 feet away was the largest, most terrifying creature he had ever seen. The Alpha Shadow Maw was even bigger up close, its head nearly touching the power lines overhead. Its armor gleamed like black metal, and its eyes burned with intelligence and hunger. For a moment neither moved. The child and the monster stared at each other across the empty street. In the ship above, Zethar held his breath. His crew watched in silence, knowing they were about to witness a tragedy. The Shadow took one step forward, then another. Its massive jaws opened slightly, revealing rows of teeth like daggers. Saliva dripped from its mouth, hitting the pavement with small hissing sounds. Billy should have run. Any adult would have run. Any sane creature in the galaxy would have fled in terror from the apex predator bearing down on them. But Billy was 7 years old, and 7-year-olds don't always think like adults. Instead of running, Billy looked up at the enormous creature approaching him. He tilted his small head to one side, studying the Shadow Maw with the same curiosity he showed when meeting new animals back on Earth. The creature stopped just 10 feet away. It lowered its massive head, bringing its burning eyes level with the child. This close, Billy could feel the heat from its breath and smell the wild animal scent of its fur. ZTHGAR's tactical computer was going crazy. The readings made no sense. Creature's aggression levels were dropping. Its hunting posture was changing. Instead of preparing to attack, it seemed to be waiting. Billy took a small step forward, then another. The Shadow Maw remained perfectly still, watching the tiny human approach without fear. When Billy was close enough to touch the creature's snout, he looked directly into its glowing eyes and spoke in a clear, calm voice. Sit. The word echoed through the empty street. In the ship above, Zethar's crew stared at their instruments in disbelief. The massive predator, the creature that had defied their most powerful weapons, was lowering its hind quarters to the ground. The Alpha Shadow Maw sat. Billy smiled and reached out to pat the creature's armored nose. Good boy, he said, just like he used to say to the neighbor's dog back on Earth. And incredibly, impossibly, the 12-oot killing machine's tail began to wag. The news of what Billy had done spread through the galaxy faster than light itself. Commander Zethar sent urgent reports to the Galactic Council, but even he struggled to believe what his own sensors had recorded. A human child had tamed the most dangerous predator in 3 star systems with a single word. Dr. Lisa Hayes rushed to the residential area with her research team as soon as the streets were safe. She found Billy sitting cross-legged next to the massive alpha shadow Ma, both of them enjoying the morning sunshine. The creature's head rested on the ground near the boy, and Billy was gently scratching behind what looked like ears. "Hello, Dr. Hayes," Billy said with a big smile. "This is Rex. He's my friend now." Lisa stared at the scene, her scientific mind trying to process the impossible. The creature that had terrorized multiple worlds was lying peacefully next to a 7-year-old boy like a giant pet dog. "Billy," she said carefully, "how did you know to tell him to sit?" Billy shrugged. He looked sad and scared. "Animals do that when they don't know what people want from them, so I told him what to do and he felt better." Pete and Maria Chan arrived running, having searched the entire colony for their missing son. When they saw Billy sitting next to the enormous predator, Maria screamed and Pete reached for his emergency weapon. "It's okay, Mom and Dad," Billy said. "Rex won't hurt anybody. He was just confused before." Commander Zethar materialized nearby using his ship's transporter, his crystalline body shimmering with nervous energy. He had commanded fleets across the galaxy, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. "Child," he said in his translated voice, "that creature is classified as a Class Alpha threat. It has killed hundreds of beings across multiple worlds." Billy looked up at the tall alien commander. "Did anybody ever try talking to them nicely?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Zethar's advanced mind processed thousands of military reports, scientific studies, and tactical analyses. In every case, the response to Shadow Mo's had been the same: superior firepower, defensive positions, and military force. "No," he admitted quietly. "No one ever tried that." Dr. Hayes began running scans on both Billy and Rex. Her instrument showed that the boy possessed no special abilities, no genetic modifications, no technological enhancements. He was completely normal by human standards, but the Shadow M's brain patterns had changed dramatically. The aggression centers were quiet while areas associated with social bonding were highly active. "It doesn't make sense," Lisa said to Jake Morrison, who had joined the growing crowd of observers. "According to everything we know about predator behavior, this should be impossible." Jake watched Billy show Rex how to play fetch with a piece of debris. The massive creature would bound after the thrown object like a playful puppy, then bring it back and drop it at the boy's feet. Its tail wagged so hard it created small dust clouds. "Maybe we don't know as much as we thought," Jake said. Word of the incident reached Earth within hours. The human colonial authority sent their best animal behavior specialists to study what they were calling the Kepler miracle, but the experts who arrived were just as puzzled as everyone else. Dr. Robert Kim, Earth's leading xenobiologist, spent 3 days observing Billy and Rex. He ran every test he could think of, but the results always came back the same. Billy was an ordinary human child who simply understood animals better than most adults. "On Earth, we've been living with domesticated animals for thousands of years," Dr. Kim explained to the assembled scientists and military officers. "We learned to read their body language, understand their social structures, and communicate with them on their own terms. But when we came to the stars, we forgot those lessons. Zethar studied the human, researched data with growing fascination and alarm. His own species, the Vorthons, had conquered their world through superior technology and tactics. They had never needed to understand other creatures because they could simply overcome them with force. Your species is different, he observed too. Dr. Hayes, you see partners where we see obstacles, you see friends where we see enemies. More shadow moss began approaching the colony, drawn by some signal or scent from their alpha, but instead of attacking, they sat down outside the fence and waited. Billy went out to meet them, always with Rex by his side, and slowly began building relationships with each new arrival. The process was remarkable to watch. Billy would approach a shadow ma calmly, speaking in a soft voice and making no sudden movements. He would let the creature sniff his hand, then gradually work up to gentle touching. Within hours, each new shadow maw would be sitting, staying, and even playing simple games. They're not monsters, Billy explained to the growing crowd of scientists and reporters. They're just big animals who didn't know how to be friends with people. The colony's children were the first to understand. 8-year-old Amy Johnson started helping Billy with the younger shadow mows. 10-year-old Chris Martinez taught one of them to play a simple version of soccer. Soon, a dozen human children were working with the creatures, and the results were always the same. The shadow mows responded to kindness, patience, and clear communication. They were highly intelligent and deeply social, but they had been isolated and misunderstood for so long that they had forgotten how to interact with other species peacefully. Commander Zethar sent regular reports to the Galactic Council, but he could tell that his superiors didn't really believe what he was telling them. The idea that military force wasn't always the answer challenged everything the galaxy civilizations believed about survival and expansion. Perhaps he wrote in his final report of the week, "We have been asking the wrong questions. Instead of asking how to defeat these creatures, we should have been asking how to communicate with them." The transformation of New Haven was swift and dramatic. Within 2 weeks, the colony had gone from a terrified outpost under siege to a peaceful community where humans and shadow mows lived side by side. The creatures helped with heavy construction work, served as early warning systems for dangerous weather, and even played with the human children. In the evenings, Billy became something of a celebrity, but he didn't seem to notice or care. He was too busy teaching Rex new tricks and helping other children make friends with their own shadow companions. Why do you think it worked? Dr. Hayes asked him one evening as they watched the sunset together. Billy thought about it seriously, the way children do when adults ask them important questions. "I think they were lonely," he said finally. "Just like when I first came here and didn't have any friends. Sometimes you just need someone to be nice to you." Dr. Hayes looked out at the colony where children and shadow mows played together. In the fading light, the most dangerous predators in the galaxy had become gentle companions, all because one small boy had seen them not as monsters but as lonely animals who needed a friend. The galaxy would never be the same. 6 months after Billy Chen had spoken that single word to Rex, the galaxy was buzzing with activity. Ships from dozens of different worlds arrived at New Haven. Every week, all wanting to see the miracle colony where humans and shadows lived together in peace. The Kronar Collective sent their finest scientists. These silicon-based beings lived their entire lives following pure logic and mathematical precision. They studied Billy and the other children for weeks, trying to understand how emotional responses could be more effective than calculated strategies. The human approach defies all probability models, reported lead scientist Zach Prime to his home world. Yet the results cannot be argued with. These creatures respond to what humans call kindness in ways our computers never predicted. The energy beings of the Nexus Confederation were equally puzzled. They existed as pure thought, without physical form, communicating through direct mind-to-mind. The idea that simple spoken words and gentle touches could create such strong bonds seemed impossible to them, but it was the Voran Empire that struggled most with these new developments. Commander Zethar had become obsessed with understanding what he called the human variable. He spent his days watching Billy work with the shadows, taking detailed notes and running endless computer simulations. The Voran High Command was not pleased with their commander reports. For 10,000 years, their civilization had expanded across the galaxy using superior military technology and tactical thinking. The suggestion that a human child could succeed where their most advanced weapons had failed was disturbing to their entire way of thinking. Commander Zethar came the stern voice of High Admiral Vexthrin over the quantum communicator. Your report suggests that military force is unnecessary. This contradicts everything we have learned about survival in a hostile galaxy. Zethar stood in his private quarters aboard the ship, looking down at New Haven through the large viewing window. Below he could see Billy riding on Rex's back through the colony streets, while other children played with their own shadow friends. High Admiral, he replied carefully, I am simply reporting what I observe. The humans have achieved something we could not. The humans got lucky, Vexthrin said dismissively. One isolated incident does not prove their methods are superior to ours, but Zethar knew it wasn't luck. He had studied human history extensively over the past months. He learned about their ancient partnership with wolves that became dogs. He read about their domestication of horses, cattle, and dozens of other species. Humans had been making friends with other creatures for thousands of years before they ever left their home planet. Meanwhile, Dr. Lisa Hayes was receiving requests for help from colonies across the galaxy. The planet Zirion 5 had been abandoned after attacks by crystalline creatures called glass serpents. The mining world of Beta Riel was losing workers to swarms of intelligent insects everywhere. Civilizations were facing dangerous animals that they couldn't control with technology alone. We need to help them, Billy said when Dr. Hayes told him about the requests. Those animals are probably just scared and confused like Rex was. Dr. Hayes smiled at the boy's simple wisdom. At 8 years old, Billy had become the galaxy's most sought-after expert on interspecies communication. But he still played with his toys and complained about eating his vegetables just like any other child. The first major test of human methods came on the water world of Aquatica 7. The dolphin-like cetacean colonists had been terrorized by massive sea creatures. Called depth stalkers, these intelligent predators attacked underwater cities and destroyed shipping routes. Billy couldn't go underwater himself, so he worked with marine biologist Dr. Kevin Lopez to develop new techniques. They studied recordings of the depth stalkers and noticed patterns in their behavior that reminded Billy of whales he had seen in documentaries from Earth. They're singing to each other, Billy observed as he watched the underwater videos. Like Rex talks to the other shadow moes. With those low sounds, Dr. Lopez had been studying the creatures for years, without noticing the musical patterns in their calls. But once Billy pointed it out, the solution became clear. The depth stalkers weren't attacking the cities randomly. They were trying to communicate, and when no one answered, they became frustrated and aggressive. Working with citation volunteers, Dr. Lopez created a translation system that could turn the creatures' songs into understandable messages. The first successful communication happened 3 weeks later, when a young citation named Blue Wave managed to have a simple conversation with a depth stalker matriarch. The results were immediate and dramatic. The attack stopped completely. Depth stalkers began helping the citations with their underwater construction projects. Within months, Aquatica 7 transformed from a dangerous frontier world into a thriving partnership between 3 different species. News of the success spread quickly, and more requests for help poured in. Human teams began traveling to different worlds, teaching other species how to communicate with their local predators instead of fighting them. Commander Zethar watched these developments with growing amazement and concern. Each success proved that the human approach worked, but it also challenged everything his civilization believed about strength and survival. The breaking point came when the Voran colony world of Keller requested human assistance. Their military had been fighting spider-like creatures called web hunters for 5 years without success. The admission that they needed help from humans was humiliating for the proud Vorthan Empire. Zethar volunteered to lead the mission himself. He had learned more about human methods than any other Vorthan, and he was curious to see if he could apply their techniques. The web hunters of Kelter were different from shadow moss or depth stalkers, but Billy's basic principles still applied. Zethar approached them slowly without weapons. Speaking in calm tones, he used his crystalline body's natural light patterns to communicate, creating colors and shapes that seemed to interest the creatures. It took weeks of patient work, but eventually Zethar managed to establish basic communication with a web hunter queen. He learned that the creatures were actually trying to protect their young from what they saw as invading crystal beings. The Vorthan's reflective bodies reminded the web hunters of natural predators from their home world. Once the misunderstanding was cleared up, the conflict ended immediately. The web hunters even began helping the Vorthans with their mining operations, using their natural tunneling abilities to reach deposits that machines could not access. When Zethar reported his success to the High Command, the response was silence. Finally, High Admiral Vexthrin spoke. You have proven that alternatives to military force exist, he said slowly. This requires us to reconsider many of our assumptions about galactic expansion and survival. Back on New Haven, Billy was teaching a group of young Vorthan officers how to work. With shadow mop-ups, the sight of crystalline beings learning patience and gentleness from a human child was something that would have been unthinkable a year earlier. The secret Billy told them as he demonstrated how to approach nervous pup is to let them know you're their friend. Everything else is easy. After that, Sethkar watched from nearby, taking notes as always. He had come to understand that Billy's success wasn't really about special techniques or training. It was about seeing other creatures as potential friends instead of threats and treating them with the respect and kindness that friendship required. The galaxy was changing one world at a time, all because a 7-year-old boy had looked at a monster and seen a lonely animal who needed a friend. 2 years had passed since Billy Chen first spoke to Rex, and New Haven looked like a completely different place. The colony had grown into a proper city, with wide streets designed to accommodate both humans and shadow. Children rode to school on the backs of gentle giants, while adult shadow mows helped construction crews move heavy equipment that would have taken machines hours to handle. Billy was 9 years old now, taller and more confident, but still the same kind boy who saw friends everywhere. He looked. Rex had grown too, his armor now gleaming with health and his eyes bright with intelligence and affection. The massive Shadow Maw had become something of a celebrity himself, appearing in documentaries and news reports from across the galaxy. But the real changes were happening far beyond New Haven. The Galactic Council had been forced to create an entirely new department called Interspecies Communication and Cooperation. Dr. Lisa Hayes had been appointed as its first director, and her teams were now working on over 30 different worlds where humans were helping other species make peace with their local predators. The success stories kept coming. On the desert world of Sahara Prime, humans had taught the lizard-like Zorans how to communicate with giant sandworms that had been destroying their cities. The worms, it turned out, were actually trying to help by aerating the soil for better crop growth, but their efforts had been misunderstood as attacks on the ice planet of Cryos. Human techniques had helped the penguin-like Phrygians make contact with massive ice bears. The bears had been stealing food supplies, but only because industrial pollution had killed their natural prey. Once the pollution was cleaned up and alternative food sources provided, the bears became protectors of the free colonies. Each success built on the lessons learned from Billy's first encounter with Rex. The basic principles were always the same: approach without weapons, speak calmly, show respect, and look for the real reasons behind seemingly aggressive behavior. Commander Zethar had become the galaxy's most unlikely convert to human method. The Voran officer who once believed only in military solutions now spent his days learning about animal psychology and emotional intelligence. His own people found his transformation difficult to accept. You have changed, old friend, said Subcommander Kushtal during one of Zethar's rare visits to the Vorthan home world. The Council barely recognizes you anymore. Zethar stood in the crystal gardens of his childhood home, looking up at the 3 moons that hung in the purple sky. I have learned that strength comes in many forms, he replied. Sometimes the greatest victory is won not by defeating your enemy, but by discovering they were never your enemy at all. High Council of the Vorthon Empire had called him to explain his recent reports. His superiors sat in their floating crystal chairs, their multiple arms gesturing in patterns of disapproval and confusion. Commander said, High Admiral Vexthrin, your methods have been successful, but they require us to abandon 10,000 years of military tradition. How can we trust in techniques developed by a human child? Zethar had expected this question. He activated a holographic display showing footage from dozens of worlds where human-taught methods had succeeded, where military force had failed. Because they work, he said simply. In every case, communication and understanding achieved what our weapons could not. Perhaps it is time to admit that our military traditions, while successful in some areas, are not the only path to survival and prosperity. The council chamber fell silent. Finally, the eldest member, Ancient Commander Keelder, spoke in a voice like wind through crystal caves. Show us, she said, teach us these human methods. If they truly represent a better way, then we must learn. Back on New Haven, Billy was working with a special group of students. A dozen young Vorton cadets had come to learn what their elders called the human approach to conflict resolution. It was the first time in galactic history that an alien military had officially requested training from humans. The young Vortons were nervous. At first, their crystalline bodies reflected their emotions through changing colors, and Billy could see flashes of fear and uncertainty as they approached the Shadow M nursery where the newest pups were kept. It's okay to be scared, Billy told them in his matter-of-fact way. Rex was scared when I first met him too. Being scared just means you're paying attention, he demonstrated by approaching a young Shadow Ma pup that was no bigger than an earth pony, though it would eventually grow to be 12 ft tall. Pup was shy and nervous around the crystalline aliens, backing away whenever they came too close. See how he's moving, Billy explained. His ears are back and his tail is tucked. That means he's worried about something. So, we need to show him we're not dangerous. Billy sat down on the ground, making himself smaller and less threatening. He spoke in a soft voice and held out his hand for the pup to sniff. Slowly, the young shadow approached its curiosity, overcoming its fear. Now you try, Billy said to the youngest cadet, a Vorin named Zixtel, who couldn't have been much older than Billy himself. Zixtel's crystalline body flickered with nervous energy, but he followed Billy's example. He sat down, extended one of his 6 arms slowly, and spoke in the gentlest voice his translator could produce. Hello, little one, he said. I am Zixtel. I would like to be your friend. The pup tilted its head, studying the young alien with bright, intelligent eyes. Then, after a moment that seemed to last forever, it stepped forward and nuzzled Zixtel's extended hand. The joy that blazed through the young Vorin's crystalline body was like watching a sunrise. His colors shifted to brilliant golds and blues, and Billy could see that something fundamental had changed in the alien cadet's understanding of the world. I felt it, Zixtel whispered in amazement. The connection, the trust. Is this what you humans call friendship? Billy grinned. That's exactly what it is. Over the following weeks, all 12 Vorin cadets learned to work with the Shadow Moes. They discovered that the techniques Billy had taught them could be applied to almost any situation involving trust. and communication. Some of them began using the same principles to resolve conflicts between different Voran factions on their home world. Dr. Lisa Hayes published her groundbreaking research, a book called Empathetic Xenobiology, Building Bridges Across Species. It became required reading at universities across the galaxy and established an entirely new field of scientific study. Pete Chen, Billy's father, designed new colony layouts that accommodated mixed species communities. His blueprints were used on dozens of worlds where humans, aliens, and local creatures were learning to live together. Transformation wasn't just limited to human colonies. Other species began adopting human techniques for dealing with their own dangerous fauna. The Cetaceans started teaching their methods to land-based species. The Saurans shared their desert survival techniques with Arctic species. The galaxy was becoming more connected and cooperative than ever before. On a warm evening 2 years and 3 months after his first meeting with Rex, Billy sat in the Central Park of New Haven, watching the sunset. Children from 6 different species were playing together, while their shadow maw companions watched protectively. The sight that would have been impossible to imagine just a few years earlier had become perfectly normal. Commander Zethar approached his crystalline body, reflecting the orange and pink colors of the setting sun. Billy, he said, I have been wondering about something. That first day when you told Rex to sit, were you afraid? Billy thought about it seriously, the way he always did when adults asked him important questions. Little bit, he admitted, but Rex looked more scared than I was, and my dad always told me that if someone is scared, the best thing you can do is be their friend. Zthgar nodded slowly. In all his years of military service, with all his advanced training and sophisticated weapons, he had never learned anything as powerful as that simple piece of human wisdom. Rex padded over and settled down beside Billy, his massive head resting gently on the boy's lap. The creature that had once terrorized 3 star systems now purred like a contented cat as Billy scratched behind his ears. Good boy, Billy said softly, just as he had on that first day. And in that moment, watching a human child and an alien predator share a quiet moment of perfect trust, Zethar understood that the galaxy had fundamentally changed. Fear and force were giving way to understanding and friendship. Weapons were being replaced by open hands and kind words. The age of cooperation had begun, all because one small boy had looked at a monster and seen a friend who just needed someone to show him how to sit.